Welcome everyone to What the Force, and welcome to the power of myth and symbolism in Star Wars. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, and with me today is my amazing co-host, Ty Black.
Hello, back again. Of course.
Of course. This is the thing to do. This segment, we explore Star Wars from a symbolic and mythological. This episode is going to focus around masks in Star Wars and what they're all about, really from this symbolic and mythological perspective. So we're going to go into a little bit of the history of masks in our world, not the galaxy far, far away, but also into anthropological ways of using masks, psychological, as well as into some of the details of the masks of characters we know and love. I really love this quote from Patrick Rothfuss, which really sums up the danger of wearing a mask. We understand how dangerous a mask can be. We all become what we pretend to be. I love that.
Yeah, it's pretty great, pretty accurate.
From a historical perspective, masks came about, I think we can probably assume anthropologically that it came out from just people, being dirty. Putting mud on their faces or having mud on their faces, which changed the view the human looked like, right? So long time ago, we're living in caves or we're living on the savannah and, hands get dirty and you rub that across your face. Earliest forms of makeup in a way too. And that change itself changes the perspective of how you, as the human interacting with the person wearing the mask, views them. They look different. They look other. Mm-hmm. And so masks really took on this religious use. But also, they were worn for protection. So to protect yourself from, fighting a giant beast, you would put on a mask so maybe it couldn't smack you in the face and knock out all your teeth, which were really important for chewing that meat that you would eventually get once you killed the beast. They were also used in a playful way, kind of how our modern kids use masks for Halloween. It has to do with trying to figure out who you're going to become. I'm going to wear a mask to live in the skin of the other for a while. Mm-hmm. I'll pretend to be Captain America by putting on his mask and see what it feels like to be Captain America. And it plays a role in growing up, and it plays a role in discovering who we are. The danger of that is that if too many people only know you as the mask, they don't know your true self, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, like you sort of covered, we're going to talk about the religious aspects of it, the practical aspects of it, and then the more playful and theatrical aspects of it. But it's very interesting that over time, it evolves. The use of the mask evolves. And it started as one thing and it became something a little different as humans grew to understand the self. They understood culture. They understood what they were passing down. And that's all related to what it means now in the modern sense and what it symbolizes.
Not all cultures use masks from their religious and cultural practices, but most do. Mm-hmm. And they've developed sort of different meanings depending on what it means to be human in that culture. But primarily, they come back to these kind of three needs to fulfill. Mm-hmm. And these are going to become the needs that our mask wearers in Star Wars actually, like the reasons they wear them, right? And they are to protect themselves, to take power, or to assume power of the other. So that could be a god or a past ancestor or a spirit. Or it's to allow them to have the freedom to do what they must do with no consequences or less consequences to themselves, to protect themselves. So it's like to protect their physical body, to protect their soul, and to give themselves powers by assuming the form and the mantle of the other.
Right.
And for the sake of Star Wars, we're going to kind of make a few assumptions that all helmets that cover somebody's face are masks.
Right.
So that includes Stormtroopers, Phasma, Kylo, Vader, Rocco Hardin in Clone Wars, you know, when he wears his mask for a little while, or even, you know, Obi-Wan changing his face into that mask. That is a mask, even though it was physically done to him.
Right.
And all masks in Star Wars, interestingly enough, also obfuscate the person's voice. Mm-hmm. It's so fascinating. There is not one mask where the person's voice sounds exactly the same as like when their mask is off.
Right. Yeah, it's a full-on disguise of their soul for the most part. It's a full-on disguise of who they are underneath the mask. They're not the same under the mask. That is the point.
Exactly. In society, from a religious and ritual perspective, masks themselves would be used for ceremonial rituals, becoming, you know, as you came into adulthood. They would be used on certain sacred days to have a key member of the village fulfill a role of a god in a ceremony.
Right. They would also, to an extreme, they would also be used in sacrifices, human sacrifices. So, like, this is, obviously, this is primitive culture, primitive society. But when you take on that mask, it is becoming the god, or it's transcending the human form.
Exactly.
And those rituals, they were essentially enacting their myths, and they were not just acting as gods or pretending to be gods, they were.
Yeah, for the sake of those involved, the person, the watchers of the ritual, the victims of the ritual, these participants, when they put on the mantle of this god in this mask-like form and in, you know, the costuming that they wear, they become that god. Mm-hmm. And that's what's so bloody important about masks and what they represent from a symbolic perspective, because it's not that Star Wars characters are doing this for no reason, right? They always have story reason, but also it has this really interesting layer of what are they trying to hide and how does that actually show more about them because of the mask that they're wearing? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And it does always harken back to the first use of masks, because that's embedded. If you come from a Campbellian point of view, it's embedded in our subconscious. What we experienced as human beings in the very beginning of time is still with us in the subconscious. Again, if you subscribe to that kind of ideology.
Well, it's not even subscribing to it, because from a psychological perspective, our cortex, which is the oldest part of our brain, holds innate reactions and fears and logic paths that have been built from how we evolved as humans. Right. So the best example that I have is most people are afraid of spiders. Mm-hmm. But you are not afraid of electrical outlets.
Right.
An electrical outlet has a bigger chance of killing you than a spider.
Yeah, but we're terrified of those.
But we're not afraid of it because we have been hardwired because of evolution to be afraid of spiders, because in our primitive lives as humanity, thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, even, you know, more than that, many of us died off to do with spiders. And so those that feared spiders in the shape of spiders lived.
Right. Yeah. No, that's essentially what it is. So Joseph Campbell, when he talks about all of this, said, I'll read off the quote, actually. He says, "For indeed in the primitive world, where most of the clues of the origin of mythology must be sought, the gods and demons are not conceived in the way of hard and fast, positive realities. A god can be simultaneously in two or more places, like a melody or like the form of a traditional mask. And if you pick apart that a little bit, because Campbell likes to talk in circles, he's basically saying that they did not rationalize that God couldn't be here and there at the same time.
Yeah.
God could be everywhere. God is wherever he intends to be.
Yeah, and for that moment that you put on that mask, you become that God's avatar.
Exactly. Oh, that good word. Avatar, exactly. Yeah, I really, truly, truly love his breakdown of the ritual, you know, and the fact that the ritual was like an enactment of the myth. And if we want to understand the modern myth, then we need to understand the primitive myth.
Yeah, it leads into it. Like it sets the groundwork, because also there's the layer in Star Wars, especially because it's modern day myth telling. Like we always say, right? We base our culture on what came before. So it's important to understand that it has all of these rich and velvety layers of history behind what a mask represents and what does it do? What does it do to the wearer? What does it do to the observer? And what does it do to us as an audience? Because we, with our cortexual lizard brains, react to the mask Kylo Ren wore. When he walked off of his shuttle in The Force Awakens, we knew he was the bad guy.
Yeah.
We knew. We knew he was the bad guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, when Darth Vader walks in at the beginning of A New Hope, we knew he was the bad guy. And if he wasn't wearing a mask, if he wasn't wearing the helmet, then people would have very different interpretations of that character, I would assume.
Yes. And when a mask comes off,
yes,
that is also a very important change. You're stripping away the mantle of the powers that the mask evokes and taking on your true form.
Yes.
Whatever that is. And you know, that could be Vader with his epic line of, "Help me take this mask off." Terrible.
That was beautiful.
Sorry. I apologize. But help me, Luke, help me take this mask off. Exactly. Yeah. You know, but that is, he is trying to strip away. He is powerless to strip away the mantle of the enforcer, the scary creature, the monster that he has become. And just like Luke coming to save him, Luke also must help him take that final step to remove the creature from him. Because that's what it is.
Right. Oh, yeah. And we'll get into that part a little bit more when we talk about the individual characters as well. The next part of like history and masks is the Greeks. And you can say a little bit more about this because I know you have a soft spot for Greek mythology. But I do love the idea that there was that change from the ritual to what people say is the ritual drama. And the Greeks took on the masks to represent, not to become, but to represent. And it was what they were sharing in that. It was still a ritual. Theater was a ritual. And what they were sharing was a praise for the gods and praise for the way that, you know, the world in their eyes worked. So they were still enacting their myth.
But that all came out of the Bacchae tradition of taking on the mask with Dionysus in celebration and freedom from the current life. So Dionysus would basically, as a god, people would follow him and take on his mantle. This is very analogous to the stormtroopers.
Oh, cool.
I'm just going to say, because they would all become the Bacchae and they were one. They were one with the god and they were free from consequences. People couldn't punish the Bacchae because they knew that if they punished the Bacchae, they would be punished by Dionysus.
Oh, cool.
And so they all became the bad guy, and you didn't know who that person was. You didn't know, and there was drunken debauchery, destruction of property. They basically did whatever they wanted in celebration of Dionysus's.
Right.
Like, kind of freedom from who you were.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
But that was a part of their ritual. That was a part of it was we look back on it, it's very interesting because that's when humans did understand the individual and the self. It was the step from primitive society where it was about the community and it was about experiencing those things as a part of just survival. And then once humans began to, and obviously again, we're skipping over like thousands of years here, but when you move into Greek society, it's established that like there is an individual and that individual has power.
But that they were also constantly being influenced by the gods around them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was that kind of this dual way of thinking was, they were just beginning to understand and embrace the individual. And that's why you have like, Greek tragedy and whatnot. It focuses very much on the fate of one person, but they bring down their entire community and they're directly affected by the gods. Because ultimately the gods were the more important part of Greek drama, and they were more, they were central to that ritual. So.
Yeah. And, I want to take a step east and just talk about Asian influenced masks. And they follow very similar meaning, but in some ways, especially with Japanese culture, the masks that were created for the omi and for kabuki and for samurai were in a way to keep bad spirits away. So it was like you wear the horror on your face so that you're not affected by the spirits that want to get you.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's got a little bit of a different twist to it. It's still worn with purpose as a protection, as, it was not only worn like the samurai themselves, which influenced Darth Vader's look. So we have to consider it when we're thinking about Darth Vader.
Right.
It's like perhaps Darth Vader was trying to protect himself from good Force ghosts.
Perhaps. Or perhaps he was just
that wanted to get at his soul.
Yeah, exactly. Perhaps he was just trying to protect himself from the spirits getting to the only thing that he had left that was human, because he was mostly machine when he puts on that mask.
And it wasn't his choice either.
No.
Choice of mask and look. That was Palpatine's.
Right. That part's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Because all of the other characters, Phasma included, correct? Put on the mask voluntarily.
Oh, yeah. But she's worn a mask since she was a child. But it just became more complex.
That's
the Phasma
awesome.
book is wonderful. I highly recommend it.
I'm going to read that one next.
So, kind of back to the Western culture, masks continue to flourish and grow, and they become less about the other and protection and more about this escapism, right? So the masquerade and revelry and different festivals.
In medieval times, again, still the human becoming more aware of the self and the individual being able to affect change. The medieval stories with masks often tell stories of the person, and the gods are no longer playing a huge role in it. But what was interesting is that obviously the church in the Western culture was very predominant. So the church was using masks to tell children and people about the 7 deadly sins, the personification of the 7 deadly sins. Obviously, there were a lot of Satan masks and demon masks, and they were gruesome and horrific, and they were supposed to scare people.
This is where, like, culture has flipped from the mask being sacred,
right,
to the mask becoming that of a villainy. And even you can tell people in any movie you watch, if they have a mask, you automatically assume they're a bad guy.
Which is interesting. So I have a little bit more about that later when we get into Star Wars, but this idea of the self, obviously, that was very solidified, kind of medieval, but then you have like the Renaissance, which does an extreme with masquerades, but also in theater. So you had a lot of, you had like the puppetry, which was very popular during that time, but with the way that they did drama in the Renaissance, it was a mockery of man. It was satirizing mostly the church and politics. And that, again, the Renaissance was all about the individual. It was about man realizing and understanding what he could do in society. And so all of their masks actually got smaller. They had completely face masks for things like parties and, like you said, masquerades. But when they did theater, their masks got small, so they just covered the eyes barely. Because the mask didn't matter so much anymore. It was about the individual. The mask was more a representation of, if the mask was black, it was a bad character. If the mask was white, it was probably a good character. If the mask was like checkered colored, it was probably a jester of some sort.
Yeah.
But most of the time, again, it was used as satire to make fun of the establishments. So
now in modern days, masks are villainized.
Masks are villainized if you are a man.
Yes.
If you are a woman wearing a mask, you're probably a hero.
Yeah. And then we go into like the whole idea of superheroes in our culture too. And there's like, they have to take a second if it's a male superhero to be like, is this a good person or a bad person?
Yeah. Things get more complicated over time, and they should. That's exactly how it should be. And subverting the expectations is something that happens in writing today. And I we'll get into the different characters, but
so I just I briefly want to talk about the psychology of masks and like why we wear them.
Can I talk about the babies thing?
Yes, of course. Yeah. No, this is good. This is good.
Apparently, there was like this experiment done with babies where they can use masks to make a baby smile. And a baby between the ages of 3 and 6 months, the infant will react to a smile with a mask, and it only needs 2 eyes. It can't be one-eyed or asymmetrical. It has to have a smooth forehead. Wrinkles produce no smile, apparently. And a nose. Funny enough, a mouth did not have to be included. So the smile that the infant was giving was not an imitation of what the mask was doing. There didn't have to be a mouth at all. If they just saw the 2 eyes and the nose, then they would smile. So it's interesting. And then of course from there, the evolution of the child growing up, they start to begin to recognize friendly faces
until they become clowns, and then they're all afraid of them.
Yeah, there you go.
No, just kidding. But no, that's really interesting. And 3 to 6 months from a psychological perspective, they still don't have very good vision, right? So large forms are hardwired to produce reactions so that if they see a face, recognize a face, even if it's in mask form, they would react to that because that's how babies get food.
Yeah.
Totally. By being cute so that the larger humans will feed them.
Yeah. And to go like a weird step further, it's the reason why we as humans see faces in toast and faces in, clouds and rock formations on other planets. Because that's what we're like you said, hardwired to see
do, like the mask on Mars, right? Or the face on Mars, the Sphinx face that they keep on saying is the Sphinx face, but it's just like a bunch of rocks. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is the purpose of wearing a mask?
Psychologically.
Like, I mean, we've talked about the anthropological and historical purpose. Like, we got that down. But, like, why would a human ever want to take on this mantle?
To hide.
Yeah. Because they don't think themselves to be worthy of the mantle that they're pretending to be.
Right.
Right? And this can tie back to kind of two different psychological means, which is me as the human, I'm trying to protect myself. So I'm trying to hide who I am, or I'm trying to become the other. And because I have imposter syndrome.
Yes.
Right? I am not who I pretend to be. Because you take on this mask to become something else because you do not think you actually are that thing.
Yes. Spot on.
Spot on. And it's important to understand why we take them off, right? So why do masks come off? Why?
Because you have like a realization or an understanding that it's doing the opposite of what you put it on for.
Yeah. Back to that Patrick Rothfuss quote, we start to become who we pretend to be.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's like even this psychological mask, like, you know, our faces, right? We protect ourselves by wearing these masks, or we try to become by wearing these masks, even if we're not wearing a mask. But remember, in Star Wars, masks are all symbolic. Mm-hmm. So they are there, but they represent the masks of humanity. So that's, I, as a human, sometimes need to pretend to be more grumpy or aggressive than I actually am to get something done, right? To do something, because I need to protect this soft, squishy human soul within me. Mm-hmm. But that takes a form in art, right? It has to be visual. It has to be audio with these changes of voice and masks and whole visage.
Yeah.
But we take them off in order to heal.
Yeah.
Right? We take them off for those we care about. We become our true self.
Yes.
Right? We realize that it's tiring to live a life of pretend and constantly be putting forth this mask that, because it's effort to maintain a mask.
Yeah.
And we also shed it because it's like shedding the cocoon to become the butterfly.
Yeah.
We shed it to become who we truly are and actually live in our own skin. With that, we begin to heal from the reasons we put the mask on in the first place. Taking off a mask psychologically is hard because it will take a bit of us with it. But is that the bit that you needed in the first place?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. That's deep.
Joseph Campbell said there is a cost to wearing a mask. Mm-hmm. And I really like that quote. And it makes me think, like, there's a weight to wearing a mask. And it actually is a reflective of the pain of our soul. And when we use a mask to hide, it's actually doing the opposite. It's showing the pain on the outside rather than working with it and becoming balanced within.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Balance has a huge, huge importance here.
And I really love this other quote, and I don't know who said it, but we weren't born with masks. We put them on so we can take them off.
Yeah.
And with that, let's talk about our Star Wars characters.
Yay!
So in general, masks in Star Wars, like, just to summarize, they dehumanize the characters. Mm-hmm. They change the voice. So they change the whole persona of the person. They hide the true self. They hide the monster within, or they hide the hero within.
Yes.
Which is really interesting.
Yes.
So which character do you want to talk about first, Ty?
Let's build up to the coolest ones. Oh, I do want to say something really interesting about kind of the women versus men wearing masks thing. Because women in Star Wars, mostly, other than Phasma, tend to be, and actually Phasma has an interesting thing about her, but they tend to be heroes that are disguised in order to get things done. And the men that are wearing masks, you don't usually see a male disguising himself with a mask. You see a male disguising himself with a hood. And a lot of the women who, if they're wearing a mask, it's a practical purpose or it's a disguise. And that also ties into the trope of the women who wear makeup are the villains, which you don't, it's funny because you don't really see that in Star Wars.
Ventress.
You do see it with Ventress. And I think, I felt like I thought of another one, but I think it's obviously Ventress. But, and you don't really know in Clone Wars what's makeup and what's a pattern of their skin. So that's the hard one.
I think it was tattoos, actually.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
But I think she exaggerated it with like eye makeup because her facial look changed from when she was a dark side user to a bounty hunter.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah. And that's the thing is, like, with women, they have, for some reason, women have to be seen with makeup on to be bad. I mean, in a lot of, it's a Disney trope, you know, if they're wearing makeup, like Cruella de Vil, Maleficent, Ursula, like, they're all wearing makeup. That is a mask. That's the female version of the mask.
We haven't seen a true female villain. I mean, we had Ventress, but she redeemed herself. We haven't seen, like, a Palpatine level female villain yet.
No, I think Phasma was the closest thing, but even she could have a redemption. Because they've refused to show her face.
They showed her eye.
But Rian Johnson, he said that's when they had part of the mask broken off, he's like, no, that's too much. I just want to see the eye. I find that very interesting.
And that was to show that it wasn't a monster. It was a human, specifically.
But he didn't.
To humanize her.
But he didn't want to beautify her.
Yeah, no, he didn't want to beautify her. But we got this blue eye, which was...
It was rad.
Human. Yeah.
Yeah. So as we talk about the characters, I want to kind of go over that a little bit too, because it's really interesting how Star Wars tends to both use the trope and subvert it at the same time.
Maybe we can go from episode 1 or 2 on, because what's really interesting about episode 1, The Phantom Menace, is that nobody wears masks.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you were like, Anakin wears a mask. But he doesn't. Sort of. He doesn't really.
Well, it's just goggles.
Yeah,
it's just goggles. Like he's just protecting his eyes. But you can still see his facial reactions. We still see him.
Yeah.
The first mask we see on screen is that of the bounty hunter that works with Jango Fett in Attack of the Clones to try to kill Padme.
Oh, you're right. Oh, yeah. And she even has. It's a woman, and she's got a little, she's a shapeshifter.
She's a shapeshifter,
and
too.
She has, like,
she has the little thing that covers her mouth.
Yeah.
And we see Jango Fett working with her. And this is the start of mystery, hidden meaning. Jango Fett is the progenitor of the stormtroopers, clone troopers. He is the first to truthfully, like, be a mask wearer where we don't know who he is.
Yeah.
You know, we see her face right away. She takes off her thing and we know she's a shapeshifter. That's a kind of different thing, right?
Yeah.
She's always changing. Whereas Jango Fett, we don't know who he is. He's the mystery of Attack of the Clones. And he is the thing that is the progenitor. He is the genetics by which all clone troopers are made.
Yeah.
Which is so fascinating. And so that symbolically represents the start of this war and the start of this trouble and the start of this mystery and you know, the dark side and his motives are very unclear, but yet obviously malevolent. Like, it's really fascinating that they use this bounty hunter, which, you know, fans obviously recognized, oh my God, that's Mandalorian armor. But it's not.
Yeah.
He's not even Mandalorian, or the Mandalorian government thinks that he's like a terrorist, basically, and has said, like, you're not a Mandalorian.
Yeah.
By the end of that movie, we have this wonderful moment where Jango Fett has had his head lopped off, you know, and Boba takes the helmet and touches the helmet to his own head, assuming the mantle.
Yes. Yeah, that's a beautiful part. I always thought that was so sad. Like, and they did, you know, go a step further in Clone Wars with it and everything, and talking about him as as a kid and becoming his dad as a child. Like, it's very interesting. And again, that's kind of a parallel to Phasma too, like taking up the mantle very, very, very early on. Makes me wonder about the...
Well, this is the first generational mask.
Yeah.
Right? So this is the first, and we have several of them. So to me, that is a theme that we should start to pay attention to, generational masks.
Yeah.
Right? And even the clone troopers versus the stormtroopers are a generational mask.
Yes.
Right? So I want to just start kind of like tagging that in our minds of like, what's going on here? What's happening from a generational perspective? But yeah, and I think that it very much shows, handing off a responsibility to the next generation.
Yeah.
Jango to Boba.
Yeah. Yeah.
Almost foreshadowing for the clone troopers becoming the stormtroopers.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and we want to talk about that next because the differences between those are very interesting.
Yeah, I love the clone troopers. So they start out being, in Attack of the Clones, everybody's the same.
Yep.
Very much like the stormtroopers, they're only given, numbers and letters for their names.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the Jedi influence, they're given full names and encouraged to mark their armor as making them unique individuals.
Yeah. When I first saw Clone Wars, I loved that about it the best because I was like, okay, this is what I'm getting myself into. This I like. I thought it was going to be a little bit more boring because I was thinking Attack of the Clones. They didn't have any individual characteristics.
But they were just out of Camino, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so, of course, they didn't. But you're thinking your imagination doesn't stretch that far yet. And then having them all be on the screen as animated individuals, even with their helmets on, having different markings on the masks that they have, it really affects you. And they even have different inflections in their voices, which is interesting. The person who voiced them did something different for each of the characters, and I thought that was great.
D. Barker Bradley would play one clone for the entire episode and then go back and play a different clone so that he could change the acting style and be that character for that length of time.
Oh, that's genius.
He's talked about it a fair amount.
Yeah.
I love him. He's amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. I haven't seen that. Yeah, but that's the biggest difference, right? Between the clone troopers and the stormtroopers.
And the stormtroopers.
Yeah, because Snoke...
That they are individuals.
Yeah, because Snoke talks about how they learned from the clones. They learned that you got to take away that individuality. You cannot have that. And I think it's more alluded to in the Last Jedi novelization than it is explicitly said, but he essentially says, instead of we learned that they must be raised as from childhood to be soldiers, but also he talks about dehumanizing them and stripping them of that individuality. Mm-hmm. So that must be, I would assume, a rule of the of the stormtroopers, at least in the First Order, and probably in Palpatine's, probably slowly following the Clone Wars, would be that they would have all of those individualized markings on their masks forbidden.
Yep.
As a rule.
Yep.
I mean, and that's why you see all of the, like, they have other markings to show where they are in their station, but that's it. That's like all you see.
Yeah, like Rex himself has like the droids he's killed, and he's got his blue markings on him. Yep. Like I love Rex so much.
Everybody loves Rex.
As a character, it's just so cool.
Mm-hmm.
No, but even people like Cody, who are considered to be one of the kind of main clone troopers that ends up kind of staying with the Empire.
Right.
Even he has markings on him.
Yeah.
Right. And we get like down to the clones that we see from their perspective on Camino as cadets and going through their troubles. We actually see them marked in that one episode with Yoda, and Yoda says, "You all have unique signatures in the Force."
Oh, that's
just kind of
cool.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
And then we get to, these dehumanized humans. And I don't know that there is a current count of how many stormtroopers there are at each level of, the war, in the original trilogy and what the First Order has. We know that there was 1 million clones produced that were ready to go.
Yeah.
Which is not a small amount of people that share your face.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? So maybe the only way that they could take on the mantle of being different was to mark their armor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of stormtroopers through the ages, we see Luke and Han pretending to be stormtroopers.
Oh, yeah. That's a thing in Star Wars. That's a thing. Yeah, they, in Battlefront 2, the part of the storyline was that they disguised themselves as stormtroopers to get onto one of the ships.
And we see that several times in Rebels.
Yeah.
Where Ezra especially pretends to be a multitude of different roles. Sabine pretends to be a pilot.
Yep.
Heroes pretending to be villains.
Yeah.
To get what they need is a big, big theme. Mm-hmm. And then we get to Finn.
Did you want to do this chronologically? Did you just want to...
No, but I think that we should talk about stormtroopers, right?
Yeah, okay.
In general.
Finn is a stormtrooper. Okay. Yeah. Finn is...
And
do you want to talk about the...
Yeah.
the bloody handprint?
No, you could talk... Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's because he was marked as an individual.
Yes. That's...
His full Simba moment.
It's so...
Simba.
Oh, yeah. No, that's for sure. There's a lot of things that evokes, I think, seeing the handprint come across the helmet. And one of the things that I thought was cool after watching Clone Wars again, after watching The Force Awakens, was again the markings that they had on their helmets and the individualization of the clone troopers. And then thinking about, that's how cool was that to come up with that idea and say, okay, we're gonna have a stormtrooper, but he's not a clone and he's not a white guy, and his moment is when he is marked. His moment where he walks away is when he becomes an individual and is no longer a clone. Essentially, he's no longer
one of the crowd like the bad guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a good. It's such a good idea.
I'm gonna just call out that in the Phasma book, there's a couple of stormtroopers that are named in the book.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So Brendel Hux lands on this planet, and this is where he finds Phasma, and he has a couple of stormtroopers with him, and the people on the planet don't understand or recognize the number name convention, and so they use the first 2 letters to name the stormtroopers, much like Finn was named, and one is called Petey and one is called Ellie.
Oh.
And they just start calling them by those names, and they don't stop. And eventually those stormtroopers die, but it humanizes them from that moment on.
Yeah.
So it's these, I think that what that's saying is that's going to be the key to the stormtroopers becoming, is going to be marking and naming.
Yeah, or it could simply be that
taking the masks off.
Yeah, that Finn. I was going to say that Finn encourages them to take their masks off and to look at one another. And
because that's what Phasma does not want Finn to do.
Yeah, totally. And to say something about the book, the book is doing, by naming someone, that's giving the reader a visual marking in their mind. Like that's giving them what the book needs to represent individualism, which is a name, right? But in a visual medium, just taking the masks off and just understanding that you're looking at another human. And
to look at each other. Because that's what Phasma did not want Finn to do.
No, he said, she's like, who told you could take that thing off? Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, because that makes him an individual.
Yeah.
People can recognize himself as other. Oh, it's wonderful.
It is. So great.
All right, let's go back a little bit. Briefly in the Clone Wars, we see several versions of masks Obi-Wan assumes this mask of Rocco Hardin.
Yep.
To fulfill the hero pretending to be a villain, thing that we see a lot in Star Wars. We also know that when Ventress is rejected by Dooku as his apprentice, she takes on a mask as a bounty hunter after, briefly trying to take revenge.
Briefly.
So she takes on a mask as a bounty hunter, and it covers her face, and she's got different facial makeup.
Yeah.
Obviously, because she's a woman.
Yes.
That's a thing.
It is.
She's actually a good person, but she's using it as a protection for herself.
Yeah.
She's better. She's not maybe a good person, but she's certainly not a bad person anymore.
Right. Ventress is the best.
And then we have a bit of kind of Mandalorian masks, which actually have a lot of this generational feel. Like Pre Vizsla is wearing the mask of his ancestors in Clone Wars. Sabine is wearing, the markings of her clan, but also of her true self, right? Because it's all artistic and stylized in her way, right? And then we also get in Rebels the Mandalorians that have taken on the mantle of the Empire, and their Mandalorian armor is stormtrooperized.
Yeah.
And they become these like faceless like Mandalorians, much like stormtroopers. It's just really fascinating to see what they do with masks when they dehumanize them.
Right. Absolutely. Oh. Okay. Padme.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to accept that makeup is a mask for women, then...
You're right, from the beginning, because she uses it to disguise herself, to protect herself.
And then, from there on
out... And to assume a mantle of power of all of the past queens. Oh, you're so right, there is a mask in the Phantom Menace.
Well, I just thought of it because I was like, the times in which Padme is actually Padme, she is not wearing very much makeup at all. Like when she is, there's a couple of times where she's in front of the Senate, but you can say she's in front of the Senate. She is taking on kind of a disguise to project a like more of a leadership role.
Yeah, it's protection, right?
Yes.
So they can't really see her true features.
Yes.
It's hiding her true self so that she can protect herself. Right? And it's taking on the mantle of all of the queens of the past, because the marking on her lips and her like dots is in the visual dictionary as the traditional like markings of the queen. Right. So she is taking on this mantle because they're elected every few years, right? They have an election cycle for the queen, and she takes on the mantle so that it's ritualistic in a way to be like, it's like the Pope wearing the Pope hat.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Wearing the whole regalia is taking on the power of the people and of this position. Yeah.
And then thematically, obviously, she was that was supposed to be a red flag to the viewer that that's not actually her because of her handmaiden that was stepping in for her double, Keira Knightley.
Keira Knightley, yeah.
But yeah, so it is interesting. I wonder if that continues to be a thing in like a kind of a theme in Star Wars, is like when women are wearing makeup, it might be kind of a signal of something. And then when they're wearing masks, again, like it's just so different from when men wear masks. It's very different.
Yeah, it means something different, certainly. Do you think we'll ever get makeup on Rey?
I've wondered about that a lot.
Other than the mascara she was obviously wearing to go ship herself to Kylo.
Well, that's what's so funny, right, about the whole makeup thing. And that's why heavy makeup usually says that a woman is a villain, because guys don't recognize light makeup on women. Only women usually recognize light makeup on women. So a lot of guys didn't notice that she was wearing makeup in that scene. Whereas a lot of girls were like, dude.
She looked, damn, she got cleaned up. She had a shower.
She had a little blush on her cheeks.
She shaved her legs. She did. Like, women do not shave their legs for just nobody.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. It is interesting, though. Because I don't think Rey will wear more makeup than that. I think that's the threshold.
Because she is her true self already.
Yeah, and it signifies so much. If she puts a lot of makeup on, people are gonna think, oh, she's gonna go dark. Oh wait,
she's a villain.
That could be a misdirection.
Yeah, I mean, it could be used as a mask, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, what if we get a female Knight of Ren? Makeup.
Oh, absolutely makeup.
Under the mask?
Absolutely.
Makeup and mask, which seems totally useless.
Unless it is seen that the Knights of Ren are, again, a mystery box, and that underneath the mask, they're not actually bad people. They are being misled.
Misled, or they are actually something different than we assume, like Enfys Nest.
Yeah, and I would say, like more so Dr. Aphra. Like, I would say it would be cool if the Knights of Ren were, like, searching for artifacts. You know, but like how Dr. Aphra's like, you know, this should be in an armory.
I hate to tell you this, Ty, but people don't search for artifacts in Lucasfilms for good reasons unless you're Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Well, that's the Dr.
Aphra's doing it for power and money.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, though. That's what I'm saying. She's doing it, but she also has her own, like, personal reasons for it. Like, she has taken on this ideology that she believes is right. It's not just to get ahead. Like, she wouldn't have been basically Darth Vader's, like, sidekick unless she believed in what they were doing, like, was the right thing.
Right. I think she was also afraid for her life, and she was trying to live as long as she could.
Yeah, but the first thing the first thing that she says in the comic when we meet her is, "This belongs in an armory." Like, it's supposed to foil the whole Indiana Jones thing. This belongs in a museum. Yeah. And that's the first thing she says, "This belongs in an armory." I think it signals that this character, and granted, I've only read the Vader comics with her in them. I know she's in other stuff, so I could be wrong.
Yeah, she has some Star Wars play, and then she's got her own comic that takes off from that Vader 2015 thread.
Oh, good.
Yeah, but totally check it out.
Yeah, no, but and then that's the thing is, like, she's got an ideology. She's got a reason, you know?
Yeah. I was just thinking, actually, Indiana Jones. Mm-hmm. Like, and that the Nazis in Indiana Jones are seeking these relics.
Yeah.
Right? For power.
Yeah.
Right? So the Knights of Ren, either way, if they are relic seekers, like the original conceptual designs were all about, which are not canon. As much as I really want to see a transforming Force Ghost Vader, and it's a cool concept, unless it's on screen, it's not canon. Yeah. These are just ideas that people are thinking up, and we get to see cool behind the scenes of people's concepts. But we don't know that that's canon because it could change. Right. But if it is, they're doing it for power.
Yeah. But that could be, again, power could be tied to an ideology. Power could be tied to, I want power in order to do this.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. You're right. I didn't even think about talking about the Knights of Ren.
Sorry. Got a little off topic.
We should really talk about Vader, because Vader is the thing that not only the clone troopers to stormtroopers, but is the becoming the other. Right? Yes. So we have overcooked Anakin at the end of Revenge of the Sith, who is taken to the Frankenstein-like slab in Coruscant to be saved, and they don't treat his burns at all with Bacta. Like, thanks, Palps. Shiv, what are you doing?
Yeah, he just, like, cuts off
Don't
his
even
limbs.
put Bacta on any of his stuff. Yeah. Just, make sure that he adds in the attachments and then seals him in the suit. Yeah. Which is gotta be painful.
Yeah.
As somebody that has burned their hand before, I can't speak to what it's like to burning your whole body.
Yeah.
And what that's like not treated. And then he seals him in. And I love the moment, and like, honestly, Hayden Christensen acted this out so well when he sees the mask coming down on him.
Yeah. It's like
his eyes widen.
Yeah.
And he's got this horror on his face.
Yeah.
Like, what is that all about? What is that?
It's the darkness.
Because he sees how dark it is, and he sees that his vision is going to change.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be tainted with blood red light.
He's not.
Is this his anagnosis?
Yeah. Well, that's a wow. We're back on that one again.
Sorry. Go listen to our Greek tragedy episode.
Where we keep trying to pinpoint the anagnosis.
No, I think it is. I think he regrets everything in that moment.
Yeah. I mean, I think doesn't the book say that he does? I mean, the book essentially says he thought of... Or, no. Sorry. They go back and they say the only thing that's not canon in... Somebody... I don't know who said this. Probably Pablo Hidalgo.
It was Pablo.
Yeah.
From a novelization perspective, the only novel that is not canon is Revenge of the Sith, because Anakin did not...
He wouldn't have thought about...
Novel of the movies, he would have thought about not just Padme, not just Obi-Wan, but also Ahsoka.
Right.
And that was because they added Ahsoka after the fact.
Right.
And Ahsoka is his Padawan.
Right. Which really expands upon his reaction to the helmet coming down, because he isn't just in fear for what happened to Padme or how he really messed up, like the one thing he wanted, but also with Ahsoka constantly telling him, this isn't right. Like, you're going down this path. I'm not sure what it is, but it's not right. And she called it way before Padme ever was aware of it.
Good.
So, yeah, of course he would have been thinking about that. And that's so sad. It is so sad. But
so he's sealed in, and it's this mantle that Palpatine has literally put on him. Right? You must become Lord Vader, and he dubs him his name, and his voice is changed, and his body is transformed, and he takes on this face.
Yeah. This
face of horror. And yeah, in 1977, when he walked on the stage, on the screen, my dad tells me this story because I wasn't alive in 1977. Sorry, guys, I'm not that old. But I wasn't alive, and my dad who introduced Star Wars to me tells me this story, and he's like, who is this complicated guy that's like being pushed around by these idiot toadies?
Yes.
Like, he's this complicated, powerful creature in a mask.
Yes. And yes, he is. And I have to say something about Vader that's funny that I didn't catch on to till kind of more recently, like since I've been older and watching the movies again. Vader was sassy in The Mask.
Oh, yeah.
He was so sassy. And
this technological terror you've created. Oh my God. You just got Vader slapped. He's so sassy, and he uses that mask not only to intimidate, the voice change, and you also hear the wheeze.
Yes.
Right? The wheeze of his breathing.
Yes.
Right? So even though he's this scary monster, he has this obvious affliction.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so powerful and so interesting. And I have a really good George Lucas quote about Vader and the mask. So this is George Lucas on Darth Vader. I had to make Darth Vader scary without the audience ever being able to see his face. Basically, it's just a black mask. I said, how do I make that evil and scary? I mean, he's big and black, and he's got a cape and a samurai helmet, but that doesn't necessarily make people afraid. His character's got to go beyond that. That's how we get his impersonal way of dealing with things. He's done a lot of horrible things in his life that he isn't particularly proud of. Ultimately, he's just a pathetic guy who's had a very sad life.
I love how he felt sympathy for him from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. He was never just supposed to be a silly villain.
Yeah. In the first film, people didn't know whether he was a person or not. And they thought he was a person in there. They thought he was a monster or they didn't know he was a person in there. They thought he was some sort of monster or some kind of robot, machine more than man. In the second film, it's revealed that he is a human being. And in the third, we find out, yes, he is a father, a regular person like the rest of us. He's just got a bit of a complexion problem.
That's amazing.
And that is the power of revealing and humanizing the mask wearer.
Yeah.
It is redemptive.
Absolutely.
We find ourselves under the mask.
Absolutely. Yeah, and like when you go back and you expand upon that with Anakin's backstory, and then, you know, you tell it in the way that makes it seem that Anakin did not take up the mask on his own. This was not his choice. That part to me, that connects for me. Not the personalities are difficult for me to wrap my head around. but when you think about it, it's about redemption. When you think about us telling the story about Anakin's life and his childhood in order to get to taking off the mask, because that's the most important part, then it makes sense.
Yeah, and I want to briefly talk about Phasma and contrast, actually, her beginnings with Vader's. And she's worn a mask her whole life as part of kind of the tribalistic origins that she has. And she progressively takes on more complex and meaningful, powerful masks until she eventually assumes the mantle of Captain Phasma, which is actually used as... Although she's considered to be a captain, she's actually like a higher ranking person. She's on par with Kylo and Hux.
Okay.
And I kind of hate that she's a captain, but she's actually used as the poster child / like Captain America of the First Order. Right? Yeah. She's like the Captain America of the First Order. Yeah. She's the Captain Phasma. And she's this, she's wearing this silver armor, which is in it of itself made from Palpatine's ship from Naboo. His own personal yacht.
Right.
And the moment that she takes on a stormtrooper helmet, they describe it almost exactly like Vader becoming Vader. With each piece of armor that's put onto her, she becomes more machine-like, less human. And they actually, like, the parallels to Vader are very strong, but it was her choice to take on this mantle. And that's why I actually think we might not get a redemption story from her.
Right.
I think she's past redemption because she has always wanted this. And it's really fascinating because I just read the Phasma book. It's just really fascinating how much it mimics, but parallels and contrasts to Vader himself.
And Phasma might be Kylo's foil in 9.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
It could very well be that the point of telling that story, though, could be that she comes back and she is tempted by the light and tempted by the resistance during some kind of stormtrooper rebellion or whatever, but stands her ground and is like, no, I've worked too hard for this. You know?
Yeah. And when the stormtrooper mask finally comes on, the speaker of the book, the person telling the story to the person telling the story to the person who's telling the story, it's a little it's a little like a game of telephone. She says, what do you see to Phasma? And Phasma sees more. Which is really interesting because I don't know that Vader saw.
No, everything was taken away from Vader. Vader had to start anew when he took on the mask. Mm-hmm. He became a child again.
Phasma very much believes that the armor provides anonymity, you know, and you can't tell if she's a girl or a guy. It's protection and it's power, and it removes the individuality. She just becomes a symbol. And that's very important to Phasma. You know, I think that Phasma is just a really good foil for Vader himself.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Enfys Nest briefly, because we just got a ever so brief introduction to who she is and what she represents. And this follows this theme of women wearing masks to, you know, take on and be heroic.
Yes.
And it's also generational in that we find out, oh, this was the mask that her mother wore, which is really interesting. And it really follows this idea of you can't kill a symbol.
Right.
Right? Like when you wear the mask, you can't kill the symbol. You have to take the mask off to be able to kill the symbol, you know? And when you have the symbol live past the lifespan of the one person and it's taken on by another, that power comes with them, that history. The power that that person had is assumed on the mantle of the new person.
Yeah.
Enfys Nest.
Right.
Which we never find out her real name, because I'm sure it's not. I think that was her mother's name.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah. And this really ties into Kylo really well as he's taken on the mantle of new Vader.
Right.
And he is wearing his mask for all of the reasons that we have said previously. It's protection. It is assuming the mantle of the other, the ancestor. He is trying to become Vader. And also to be able to do the things that he must. Put away Ben Solo. Kill him.
Yeah.
But also because he is an imposter. He doesn't actually think that he is Vader. That's very clear.
Oh, yeah.
In his characterization. And I love that Rian Johnson, I would say that it was maybe before, say, JJ would have taken off the mask, but that Ryan was like, nope, you're taking off that mask.
Yeah.
See, we got to humanize you earlier in this story.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of our three main heroes our three main interesting people in The Force Awakens, Finn, Rey, and Kylo, all start out in the beginning wearing masks. What do you think that's all about, Ty?
Oh my God. Well, it's obviously the mystery box of the mask, right? Definitely wanted to point out that JJ used the masks as mystery boxes of their own. What was inside them? What was behind them? Mm-hmm. And when you have a literal cut reveal, when we first are introduced to Rey, it's right after we're introduced to Finn and Kylo. So Kylo is wearing his mask, looks at Finn, feels Finn's conflict, right? And they look at each other very briefly through their individual masks. And Finn's is marked. And Kylo, again, Kylo obviously feels that conflict. And then later when Finn takes off his mask, gets kind of chastised for it by Phasma, puts the mask back on. And we're not sure. Okay, we're like, okay, he took off the mask. We know he's probably a good guy. What's going to happen next? He put it back on. Okay, what's going to happen next? And then they cut reveal to Rey. And Rey's also wearing a mask.
And her mask is a mirror of Kylo's. It's soft. It has the same, like, eye focus on the eyes. So there's something about the eyes. Oh, man. Maz Kanata's line, although was a misdirect in The Force Awakens, I think is going to come back and be important in the future because they focus so much on the eyes. And actually JJ, to the kind of the quote that you said earlier, he specifically says those silver lines kind of reflect and change color with the action. You know, he's standing in front of a fire. You can see that. It almost brings you into the mask.
Yes.
But why put those silver lines around his eyes? Because you see the same eyes in different people, right? And we know that their stories are connected. The fact that Rey and Kylo have similar but opposite masks, is so important.
Yeah, and the fact that every one of the main characters. I mean, Poe wasn't always a main character to begin with, right? So, but all of the main characters were introduced wearing masks. So, if anything, that's what this particular movie, that's what their intros are trying to tell us, is that these people are going to go through periods of transition throughout the next few films
where they will be unmasked and we will learn more about them and they will fully become who they are meant to be.
Exactly.
That's the point of wearing a mask is to become who you are meant to be when you take it off.
Right.
To become yourself.
Right. Who you were trying to hide when you put it on.
Yeah. Exactly.
we just got back to the beginning.
So, do you have any last thoughts on masks?
I think it's important to remember that masks are meant to be taken off, but also that masks, when they are worn, transcend what is human. So it's not just simply a dude wearing a mask or a woman wearing a mask or a disguise. It's not simply that ever. it's always meant to touch something within the subconscious and meant to symbolize something. I mean, that's what this segment is all about. So
I love this quote. I don't know again who said it, but sometimes it's not the people who change, it's that the mask comes off.
Right.
And we see that very strongly with Vader. Help me take this mask off. We see this very strongly with Who Are You? With Han, and Leia as Bosch, which we didn't even talk about.
Yeah.
But such a wonderful moment. And she's like, someone who loves you.
Yeah.
And we see that very powerfully with Han, who just wants to see the face of his son.
Mm-hmm.
Take that thing off. You don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
What is it you think you'll see? The face of my son.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so powerful. And then the fact that we get those lines from Rey and Snoke. A monster in a mask, she says. And Snoke's like, a child in a mask. It's like, you're trying to be these things that you're actually not, Kylo. And it was a good thing for you to have the mask taken away from you.
Yeah.
So that you can actually face yourself in the mirror.
Yeah, absolutely.
See who you truthfully are. No, so powerful. This has been What the Force, the power of myth and symbolism, masks and the hidden self. I'm really excited to see what they do with masks in the future in Star Wars. It's such a powerful theme. We talked a lot about the different aspects of masks and the different characters. Thank you, Ty, for joining me.
Yeah, this has been really fun. Could talk about this for like even more hours, but
I know we might have to come back to it if we get more masks.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Ty, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter at black_TYM, or you can find me on YouTube at Wit and Folly.
And I am Marie Claire Gould, and this has been What the Force, Power of Myth and Symbolism. We are at WT Force Show on Twitter. whattheforce.ca is our website. And we are on Facebook at What the Force Podcast. Feel free to reach out to us on any of those platforms. We're also available on pretty much any podcatcher. It really helps us if you share out the show to people we don't know, or leave a review on iTunes or any of your other pod type catchers. It helps people find us and really is the best thing you can do to show appreciation.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for listening, and cheers.
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 Cheers. All right.